Someday, my people are going to come up with some sort of a doctrine. Something that tells us what we can and can't do out here. Should and shouldn't do. But until somebody tells me that they've drafted that directive, I'm going to have to remind myself every day that we didn't come out here to play God.
Hey everyone, my name's Captain Jack and welcome to Trek Central. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down our top 5 moments when characters from the Star Trek universe broke the most important rule in the book, the Prime Directive. Hit it. So, the Prime Directive, also known as General Order 1 or the Non-Interference Directive, is a complex directive made up of 47 sub-orders. Though to summarise, it forbids a Starfleet officer, Federation citizen, or a representative from making contact in any way with a species in a state of pre-warp development. This directive also prevents them from intervening in a way that would alter a pre-warp species' natural, unassisted development, even if well attended. Essentially, do not interfere with internal affairs. Don't save them from an exploding volcano. I'm looking at you, Kelvin, Kirk. You get the idea, really. The directive supersedes all other laws, any and all subsequent directives, with only one exception, the Omega Directive. General Order 1 is viewed as so fundamental that Starfleet officers swear to uphold it, even at the expense of their own lives. It was implemented at some time after 2168, therefore Star Trek Enterprise as a whole will be exempt from the list, despite the times it clearly would have violated it. In at number 5, the original series, The Paradise Syndrome. The Prime Directive is never verbally mentioned in the episode, but there are several instances where it is clearly broken and it could have been avoided. In 2268, Captain James T. Kirk, Spock, and Dr. Leonard McCoy visited a planet one aesthetically akin to Earth, where he quickly discovered an obelisk which cannot be scanned by a tricorder. Spock reminded the other of their 30-minute window before they must return to the ship and warp to a deflection point to divert the course of an asteroid headed for the planet. They picked up lifeform readings which turned out to be identical to Earth's Native Americans, who were moved to the planet by a super race, the Preservers. They passed through the galaxy rescuing primitive cultures which were in danger of extinction, and seeded them where they could live and grow. The obelisk was placed there in order to protect the planet and its people from events that would put them in a position of extinction again, and likely to block any scans that would attract would-be hunters, thus explained how Enterprise couldn't get more detailed readings. Before the team beamed to the surface with the new information at hand, heading back to the ship should have been their first priority to avoid detection by the locals, even if they were initially observing, especially since they were clearly wearing brightly coloured uniforms, and nice uniforms they are. Dr. McCoy was quick to suggest warning them of the impending asteroid. I mean, damn it Jim, he's a doctor after all and wants to save lives, but however well intended that would have been in violation. McCoy's idea was initially deterred by Spock, but then almost immediately counterpoints and says to McCoy that he should continue his investigation, after they had diverted the asteroid. Now Captain Kirk revisits the obelisk alone, falls down a trapdoor, and is promptly rendered unconscious by a device inside which emits some kind of electric charge. The captain, now missing, and sometime close to 30 minutes, several search parties and scans later, Spock made a command decision to leave the planet and warp to the asteroid, otherwise it would pass a point of deflection. Let's digress for a moment. At that point, they are aware of the planet's natives. The question now, is it still a mission to stop the destruction, or at least a detrimental effect on the ecosystem of the planet, or in fact further interference with that would be considered a natural disaster waiting to happen to the civilization? It turned out that the obelisk is malfunctioning and won't divert the asteroid as intended, likely due to Kirk's unintentional invasion of it, which subverted its original operation. There is never a clear reason given as to why they are deflecting the asteroid in the first place, and obviously the presence and function of the obelisk was at the time unbeknownst to them. Now Kirk eventually found his way out of the obelisk cave. He was kind of dazed and confused about who he was and where he was. He was probably met by 2 passerbys, the chief's daughter Marmia and her handmaiden. Now originally, as goes with all the original series, they believed him to be their god, capable of anything, including controlling the obelisk, which later turns out to be a non-functioning and needs to be manually activated to deflect the incoming asteroid. Okay, now you could argue that Kirk in his altered mindset could be excused for his actions on the planet, however the mere neglect to leave once they realised who and what they had found could have saved everyone from the ramifications that followed. You can't deny Kirk went off on his own and got himself in a situation unbefitting of a captain, and emerged as a proclaimed god, which resulted in the death of Merame, his later wife, who carried his unborn child. Nevertheless, Spock and Kirk eventually save the planet, where Enterprise had previously failed, but it was all just a chain of events that led to them by saving everyone which could have otherwise been saved, if not for their meddling in the first place. With no repercussions following this event, you can bet your latinum that Kirk didn't write an accurate or kept it off the books altogether report. In at number 4, we're talking about the next generation pen pals. In 2365, Lieutenant Commander Data spends 8 weeks communicating with a girl on the planet Dreamer 4. Eventually, he asserted that her planet is undergoing the same symptoms as the other planets that they've been investigating, which changed from thriving ecosystems to barren wastelands in a very short period of time. Data asks Captain Picard for further advice on his situation, and if they can save the planet from its fate, despite it being a homeworld of a pre-warp race. Picard said he would call a conference to discuss it, but Data was ordered to cease communication with the girl due to her being of a pre-warp civilization and was in fact in violation of a Prime Directive. It was no longer a matter of how wrong Data was or why he did it, but the dilemma still exists. Lieutenant Worf simply argued that there are no options. The Prime Directive is not a matter of degree, it's an absolute. Their actions will profoundly change the future.
If there is a cosmic plan, is it not the height of hubris to think that we can or should interfere?
At this point, there is a clear divide between who is for and against violation. Commander William Riker and Worf are for letting nature take its course. Dr. Pulaski and Geordi LaForge were clearly in favour of saving the Dromaians, LaForge openly rejecting Riker's consideration of letting them perish. Meanwhile, Counsellor Deanna Troi pointed out that if there were a cosmic plan, then their mere presence involves them in that plan. They are a part of fate and that they were meant to interfere. Picard asks, in making the exception in the death of millions, would it be the same in an epidemic, not a geological calamity, or a war in generations of a conflict that would be killing millions? Or if the government enslaved millions, would it be right to intervene? Although the initial order was to sever contact with the girl, Data played an incoming message, a plea, which wittingly changed Picard's mind. Wesley Crusher's science team conducting research on the planet found it was due to a natural form of dilithium buildup, which forms in a lattice and caused tectonic activity, which led to the planet's unstable state. During this time, Data requests permission to beam to the surface and deliver a message of help, but he was unable to send due to a communication breakdown. Picard became increasingly worried of their involvement. However, they'd come so far, so he granted a request, and once again gestured to Riker that they were now over their heads. Riker, clearly then invested in helping, ordered Transporter Chief Miles O'Brien to take a nap, so he didn't see or become involved in the situation of him beaming down Data to the surface. Very honourable. Suffice to say, they saved the day. The planet returned to a safe state, and the girl had her memory altered so she would not remember Data or her time on the ship. In at number 3, we're back to Deep Space Nine in the episode Rapture. It would take far too long to explain how Benjamin Sisko's appointed title walks the line throughout the majority of the series, so we're going to focus on a particular event which, had he followed orders, should have gone one way, but he went the other. In 2369, Commander Cisco was given command of Deep Space Nine, and a standing order by Captain Picard to get Bajor to join the Federation.
Sounds like they're not ready. Your job is to do everything, short of violating the Prime Directive, to make sure that they are.
Not too soon after being appointed to the station, a series of events led to Cisco being named emissary by the Bajoran people. Granted, he did not ask for that title, however he honoured and respected their decision, went along with it, and later fully embraced it, accepting his title and the role it carried. In 2373, Cisco became obsessed with finding the ancient city of Valhalla on Bajor. His obsessions led to an accident in the holosuite, which in turn led him to have visions of Bajor being destroyed by swarms of locusts, which after headed towards Cardassia. The vision perhaps foreshadowed the impending Dominion War, which Bajor would have been dragged into, heavily disadvantaged and no doubt destroyed, if they were made a part of the Federation. Cisco's advice to Kai Wynn not to join the Federation, not yet, saved them. Amidst the Dominion War, Bajor was offered a non-aggression pact, protecting them from any and all attacks by the Dominion, but also preventing them from giving any and all assistance to the Federation, under penalty of breaking the pact. Had the signing ceremony not been interrupted, this would have marked the admission of Bajor into the Federation, and thus the completion of Cisco's Starfleet mission to do everything short of violating a Prime Directive to ensure Bajor's entry into the Federation. Ironically, it is Cisco himself who prevents this outcome by interrupting the signing ceremony, and warning Bajor to stand alone, an action brought about what could be considered a gross violation of the Prime Directive. Cisco's acceptance of the emissary of the prophets, or a godlike figure. Star Trek writer and producer Ronald D. Moore even went as far to comment it's a classic example of what not to do. The Starfleet captain who encounters a primitive culture and declares himself a god. That has to be something they teach Starfleet Academy students in their first year. So certainly when they start hearing that somewhere out there on the frontier, Ben Cisco is now being revered as a Prophet spokesperson for the Prophets, it would probably raise a lot of eyebrows back at headquarters. Number 2. Voyager Demons Course in Oblivion. In 2374, the USS Voyager was forced to enter Grey Mode in order to preserve their rapidly diminishing deuterium. After detecting a Y-class demon planet rich in deuterium, they headed on over. Due to the nature of the planet, a number of reasons cropped up as why they couldn't simply extract the deuterium from the comfort of the ship. Now that left Ensign Harry Kim and Lieutenant Tom Paris to take a shuttle on a harrowing mission to the surface, to collect it manually, in the safety of environmental suits, thankfully. Not long after finding the deuterium-rich deposits in the form of liquid silver pools, both their suits became compromised and quickly passed out from oxygen deprivation. With Voyager now landed, Commander Chakotay and 7 of 9 headed out to find their lost comrades. They find the abandoned shuttle, and shortly after, Chakotay is helped out of a near-death situation by Tom, who is no longer in his environmental suit. He led them to Harry, also without his suit on. As it turns out, these weren't the original Voyager crew members. Instead, they were replicants created by the liquid silver pools, or silver blood as they come to know it. To clarify now, the Prime Directive isn't knowingly broken, not yet. The silver blood was not self-aware until it came into contact with Tom and Harry, after which it was considered sentient. Captain Catherine Janeway stipulated that the blood wished to copy the rest of the crew, to populate the planet, however it would not be home to them. Duplicate Harry argued that they would rather die than be alone. This left Janeway facing a tough decision: refuse and risk a new sentient life being destroyed, which he inadvertently helped create, or accept and alter the natural progression of the silver blood. The crew agreed to be duplicated and the ship was allowed to leave. 2375, 2 years after the original incident, although unknown to the original Voyager crew, the silver blood duplicated the entire ship and populated it with the crew. It would stand to reason it was another set of the crew, as they were completely unaware that they were copies when they had left the planet, and resumed course of the Alpha Quadrant. The Kelvin timeline, 2259, on the M-class planet Nairobi. Kelvin timeline's James T. Kirk and Dr. Leonard Malloy were chased through a red leaf forest by Nairobians, who were very clearly pre-warp. Nevertheless, he had for some reason stolen a sacred scroll from their temple and legged it. He stunned a large creature, or as McCoy called it, "I'll ride out of here," and they proceeded to escape on foot. He and McCoy leapt from the cliff into the ocean below where the Enterprise was hiding. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sulu is piloting Shuttle 1 into an active volcano on a mission to interfere with a naturally occurring event that would negatively impact the Nairobians. They were there to observe, not stop the volcano, but sometimes the captain does what the captain does.
You just saved the world.
You violated the Prime Directive.
Oh, come on, Spock. They saw us. Big deal.
Which Prime Directive did you find the most interesting on our list? Or have you got a favourite rule-breaking episode of your own? Let us know in the comments section below, we'd love to hear about them. If you want to keep up to date with the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, or you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow us on social media to never miss a video. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching Trek Central, and we'll see you in the next one. Live long and prosper, my friends.